Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on 3 ways to measure the ROI of a low-code platform. My name is Reshma and I'm a product marketing manager at Kissflow, and I'm really excited about this webinar and really stoked for this topic, especially today, and let me tell you why. Usually when we talk about the ROI of a low-code platform, we generally focus on some of the aspects like faster development time, improved developer productivity, and reduced IT expenses. But we often skip over some of the important details like the types of apps that can be built on a low-code platform, the types of users who will be ultimately working on that platform, and also the costs involved, right? There are so many other such questions that keep popping our heads when we think about investing in a low-code platform. And many times, even when you are convinced about investing in a low-code platform, your stakeholders might need more convincing, and they really want to know the ROI of making such an investment, right? And that's exactly what we are diving into today. And with us, we have Neil Miller, the Director of Product Marketing at Kissflow, who's going to break down how to measure this ROI effectively. A quick and short intro about Neil. Neil looks after the storytelling for the Kissflow platform, and he aligns product, marketing, and sales to present a cohesive story to our core audience. And prior to this, Neil was running the Digital Workplace, a website and podcast for industry leaders to rebuild work for the digital age. And yeah, that's about Neil. And before we dive into the webinar, I would like to encourage every one of you to post any questions you may have at any point during the webinar in the chat box. And also please stick around until the end to receive a personalized ROI report for your organization. So without any further delay, let's jump right into the webinar, and over to Neil.
Well, thank you very much and welcome everyone to this exciting webinar. I'm really thrilled to be here with you and to talk about the ROI of low-code platforms. It's a great topic. I know a lot of you are interested in it. You've probably done a lot of your own research to figure out where you fall in this. And really our goal throughout this whole webinar is just to equip you with some talking points, with some ideas, maybe some new ways to think about ROI you haven't thought of before, and really some classifications for how people are using low-code platforms. So let's dive in, if you don't mind, right away. To start off, just a little summary. I'm sure most of you have done your research on low-code platforms, else you wouldn't be here. But really, the point of low-code platforms is really just to figure out how to develop applications faster, to bring more people into the cycle of developing applications. They're a way to abstract most of the hand coding that was happening, and just to make the process overall faster, being able to push out applications in a much more efficient way than we were doing before. So a lot of low-code platforms out there, but they do vary a lot in terms of price. Some are extremely expensive, some are more reasonable. So the way you talk about ROI will depend on how you're planning on using that low-code platform. Let's look at 3 main use cases for how companies use low-code. There really are different ways to approach it and different reasons people want to get into it in the first place. So on one side, we have the idea of you have a very specific project you want to get done. Specific application, it's an enterprise-wide application. Something that's going to touch everybody, or something that's going to be extremely strategic for the organization. You're wanting to use low code because you're wanting to get it done a little bit faster, or because you're wanting to use a platform that you can reuse in other ways. Here, the main point is that you just want to be able to build something very specific for the organization, and to be able to reuse it, to be able to come up with ways to maintain that app better. But really the focus is on the app. You might have one, you might have 2 different projects, but really that's the big one that you're wanting to build. You've seen it built on other platforms, you want the same thing built on your own. Second one, when we're talking about use cases for low code, is to handle a backlog. Now, instead of just like one specific application you're wanting to build, now you probably have a list of maybe 10 to 100 different applications that as an IT team, you're supposed to be building. You have requests for. These are legitimate requests, vetted out. The VPs of business units have requested these, but they just end up on the backlog, and they're hard to get to because of the time that it takes to build it, or the skill set that it takes to build it. So when we're talking about this use case, really, again, you're talking about the goal is speed. The goal is to be able to go in and say, okay, I don't have the 6 months that it takes to to build all these from scratch. So I want a platform that's going to enable me to build a lot of these in much less time, a few weeks, a month at the most, to be able to get these out in production, get departments using these. These are like departmental applications you're trying to build, but you have a long list of them and you're trying to work through that backlog a little bit faster. The third use case we'll look at is citizen development. This is really a totally different paradigm from the first two. Here in citizen development, you're actually wanting to bring in other people besides just the IT team to be able to build applications. Now, these applications are not necessarily the very complex ones you're going to see on the far left project side. They may not even be departmental wide. They're probably like work group applications, things that process owners have. When we talk about citizen development, we're not talking about necessarily giving everyone in the company access to build their own apps. Usually you're talking about specific business analysts, process owners, people who have the right mindset and enough of a skill set to think about things in systems. Usually you're talking about even lower coding or potentially even no coding to get to that point. But this is really a different use case than the other two, because you're trying to almost instill a new paradigm for how you're going to build applications. So we're going to break down these three across ROI and look at what that might mean in those different situations. Before we do, let's just talk about who cares about ROI. If you are attending this webinar, you're probably doing your research, trying to figure out how to advocate for a low-code platform in your organization. It depends on which use case you have, who cares about it the most. But these platforms, again, they're not cheap. They require a decent size investment depending on how you're going to use it. So oftentimes you need to be able to explain the platform in terms that your CFO is going to understand, or other people, part of the operations team or the finance team, to be able to know that the money you put into the platform is going to be worth it for the end result you're going to get. So really, we're here to equip you. We're here to help you figure out how best to do that and how best to explain that. So I'm going to break down each of the use cases and look at some notes about each one, what your investments are going to be, what type of ROI metrics are best for this use case to look at, and then some challenges that come about. So we're going to look at that for each of these use cases. First, let's talk about projects. Now, in projects, this is the most clear ROI to measure, because you typically have a set budget. It's an allocated budget. You already know where the money's coming from, where it's going for. And companies really want to see that ROI. Typically, they're wanting to see something like a 2, 3, 4x ROI for the platform that you're putting in for this. It's very clear because the numbers, the number of applications is reduced and contained for that. The investment that is going to take for this, first is obviously the platform cost. Whatever low-code platform you choose, you're going to have a licensing fee. That could be on a usage basis, that could be on a user basis, could be on a per app basis. So every platform prices themselves a little bit differently. Be prepared for that and make sure you know that going into it, what exactly those platform costs are that you're going to pay. Now that's just one portion of it, and potentially the smaller portion of the bigger cost, which is the developer cost. Now for these big projects, you're likely going to bring in a GSI to be able to be the ones that implement the actual project, to build it out on that system. A lot of these platforms that are in that big, huge enterprise space are still complicated. So just because we call them low-code platforms doesn't mean they're necessarily simple. They're just abstracting some of the coding away from it. So you're still going to need people with a very specific skill set, serious developers to be able to build on these. Now these costs, easily you're going to start off in the low millions to get these projects off the ground when you combine all these costs together. So that's kind of a starting point when you're talking about ROI. When you look at the metrics that you should use to calculate the ROI, you can go in a couple different directions when you're talking about the big projects. The first we'll talk about is just time to value. You typically know these big projects, exactly how much value they're generating, and if it's going to take you a year and a half to build this from scratch, comparing that to the amount of time you could get it done on a low-code platform is a really clear thing. If you can save a few months, just that time to value itself is one great way to measure the ROI. Some of these projects are revenue generating, not all of them, but a lot of them are there directly interfacing with customers or in a way that does generate revenue. So again, that helps you understand how much value that app is creating, and so you can use that to offset the cost of the investment that you're putting into it. Reduction of existing software is another one. You probably, if this is a big enough app, you probably already are running it somewhere else and you're just wanting to upgrade it, or you're wanting to change the platform that you're on. So this may be a way to get off a certain platform that is costing you more money, and that cost alone may be enough to justify the expense that you're going to spend on moving it forward. Now, probably the biggest challenge that we've seen in the market from these large projects is that you end up using multiple platforms for different projects. It's not uncommon to go into a large organization and they're using several different low-code platforms, which would seem crazy from the outside if you think about how a low-code platform approach is supposed to be used. But when you just need that one application, you just need that one big project, you're going to go find the platform that fits that best and already has most of the components and the use case ready to go. So that's how people end up using a lot of these multiple platforms for different projects. The problem is you're really not going to get the full ROI you anticipated off of this. Now, it may be enough ROI just for this use case. You built the app, it's done, you got your money back, but you're really not getting the best value out of it. So this is an overview of how you might look at ROI for projects. Now, let's go into this backlog situation. Again, this is where you have 10 to 100 different applications that are just waiting to be built from the IT team. They want a quick way to get in there. These applications are departmental. They're not super complex, but they're not necessarily just very simple. You need something that your IT team is able to build and to build out in a quick way. Now, here's where you can actually see an extremely high amount of ROI coming in because it's something where it's a compounding effect. The more apps you build, the more value you're getting for the project, depending on how it's priced. But this can be a really powerful way to look at ROI from each of the use cases. Investments, similarly, you're talking about platform costs, but again, make sure you're clear. Is this a per user basis? And so the more apps you build, the more users you need to bring in, or is it a per usage basis? Some apps may not be used that much, but they are still very essential to be used. So just figure out what it is. Some platforms do charge per app, so the more apps you make doesn't necessarily mean the more ROI you're going to build in. So this is an important part of calculating this ROI. You will still have developer costs with dealing with backlog, but now you have a little bit more of an option because the application may not be so complex. You can opt for in-house talent. So maybe you have people on your team who are familiar with that platform or who can be trained in that platform within a reasonable amount of time. Or you might use more regional service integrators to be able to take advantage of a little bit of cost savings on that side, not having to use the global players. So the investment should be less than you were on just the project basis. But again, if they're charging per app, then that could also drive up the cost a lot. Your ROI metrics here are really centered on development costs. Because you're talking about perhaps dozens of applications that you're building, each application will have a different way to measure its own value. Some of them will be revenue generating again. Some of them may just be productivity generating. So we find it best just to focus on the development cost. What would be the cost of just building this application on your own, hand coding it, or using a different platform for it? This tends to be the best way. Most even like pretty basic departmental applications are going to start at 50,000 up to 100,000 or so, even just for a simple type application that's there. So if you use that as a basis for understanding, okay, I have 20 applications I'm trying to get out this month or this year, then that can be a really great way to show the value you're getting. And if you just focus on that ROI metric, that often is enough to be able to justify the expense. A lot of these applications, again, some of them are going to result in a full-time employee reduction, whether that be from the necessary people you would have to hire on the IT team to build those out, or just the app themselves may be able to bring that in. Time to value is another one. If you know the value of these applications, it can drive that direction. Another one we don't talk about a lot is maintenance cost. Once you build these applications, you will need to maintain them, and maintaining them on a low-code platform is going to be much easier. It's not going to take as much change management, as much time, as much talent to be able to go in and make the changes into these applications, so that can save you a lot of money in the long run as well. A last one that is also overlooked is compliance and risk avoidance. Many of the applications you're going to build in this backlog have to do with being compliant, trying to avoid a certain amount of risk within a certain department. And just that cost alone of being out of compliance may be enough just to justify building these applications on a platform like this. So that's often a great way to justify how much you're going to spend on these platforms. When we look at the challenges of the backlogs use case, It really just depends on how the platform is priced, like we talked about. If you're paying per app that you're building, then each app needs to be able to justify itself, which really defeats the purpose of a platform strategic approach where you're trying to spread this out over several different applications. Instead, if you have a platform that's charging per user, or better yet, even usage, then that really helps you, because then you're getting the value that you put into it. You could build 50, 100, 200 different applications on this platform, and you're not necessarily spending an exponential amount on it. So that's really a great use case and a great way to talk about ROI for applications built in the second use case of backlog. The other challenge comes into who's actually building it. Who's going to be the one that does it? If you're still relying on regional SIs to do this, then your costs are going to definitely increase. But if you're able to rely a little bit more on in-house talent, and if you choose a platform that is a little bit simpler to use, then you don't need to necessarily have as skilled, as experienced developers. That's going to definitely bring down the cost that you have to worry about for bringing in the ROI for backlog situations. All right, the last one we want to talk about is the ROI for citizen development. Like I said, citizen development is really an entirely different mindset. It's a different paradigm to bring in. You're talking now about using a certain percentage, 1 to 3% of all your employees are probably capable of thinking about building their work group applications, team applications, things that are going to make their lives much easier, but things that would never end up on IT's backlog even. If you are looking at citizen development, ROI is probably not the driving reason for it. You're probably not just looking to cut costs. This is really a paradigm shift. It's something that you want to change the mindset. You can imagine what it was like for the first CIO to look at what a personal computer could do and say, yes, I want to get one of those in the desks of all the people in my organization. The ROI probably wasn't the first thought in their mind, was being able to justify that. It was a shift. It was a progressive move to be able to drive that. And citizen development is a similar thing. You're trying to get people to have the skills, have the tools to be able to build their own applications, really taking your workforce to the next level. So we'll talk about ROI, but probably ROI is not going to be the main thing. Not that it's not there, but it's probably not the driving reason you're going after citizen development. Here, your investment, again, continues to be the platform cost. You're going to have to pay to be able to give everyone access to this. And it's potentially that it could be a higher amount. A lot of times it's going to be a per user cost at this point, but it could also be a per usage cost, which will, again, the more you use it, the more value you get out of it. Here, you're talking maybe a little bit of a center of excellence cost. You will probably need some developers or some people who oversee this as a program and would be able to give some justification and be able to give some direction for the people who are building it. Your developer cost comes down drastically because you really don't want your developers doing a lot of work on this. You want the citizens to do it, the process owners, the business analysts, the people who actually are wanting to use it. So you really don't need to worry about paying for that developer cost. You'll still need to have people who are able to come in, do some help out with those types of things, but the cost should be much reduced in that way. Now, your ROI metrics are very different here because your applications can run into the thousands. Now, you're developing hundreds, thousands of applications, and obviously you have good governance. You're wanting to make sure things happen and they're all within the parameters. But now each one of those applications can be measured in entirely different ways. Many of them will be based on productivity. It may just help one small team be able to be more productive with their time. And if you look at that one team trying to get the ROI out of that, it's probably not as much as you think. But when you multiply that across 1,000 applications that are going to be built across the enterprise, then the ROI becomes very clear and obvious that it comes in. Here, again, a few other metrics you can look at. Full-time employee reduction, being in compliance is another one that stands out as things. But one thing we haven't talked about yet is employee retention. Now you're talking about offering your organization and the people who are working there, team leads and business leads and directors, the ability to have something that most other organizations don't have. Typically, they're going to have to wait for something. They have to go out and buy something that's not customized to what they need and try to adapt that. Here, you're creating a new culture and something that will equip people, make them feel more valued, make them feel more empowered to be able to run their organizations and inside their work groups. So that's a really good another ROI metric to look at, just be able to retain employees and make them feel more empowered to lead their divisions. The challenge here is it's a different mindset. We're talking about a program you're trying to run, and not just one project that you got done, you got the money and you're out. It's an ongoing program, something you do need to invest in, just thinking about how you're going to roll this out and thinking about who you want to run that and how you want to bring that in. So probably the main challenge of the ROI on citizen development is that it's an ongoing thing, and you want to continually show that it's worth it and it's valuable. Again, it's going to be harder to show just individual dollar amounts for ROI for citizen development, but it's probably not the driving reason anyway that you want to do it. It's a new thing. It's something you want to roll out there with organizations. And most platforms aren't ready for this. We've talked about the fact that low code doesn't mean simple. Low code just means hopefully faster for developers to make. So there are very, very few platforms out there that are ready for citizen development, that someone without a coding background could come into and just immediately create an approval workflow, or immediately creates a form and be able to roll that out and attach that to a workflow, turn it into a board, turn it into an integration with another system that they have. That's going to be very difficult on most platforms to have it. One reason we love to talk about it at Kissflow is because we are great at that. It is a use case that we excel at. We've always kept our platform very smart and simple. So it's something that we take pride in, and if this is a use case for you, that's great for us. Now we're also great at the other use cases, specifically clearing off your backlog. But this is a unique situation where we're also very, something we just love talking about, I guess is the best way to say it. So I will close up with that. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this has given you some context to be able to talk about ROI, equip you with some tools and some ideas about how to discuss low-code platforms in your organization.